All right, I'd like to call to order the Village of Ashwaubenon Park and Rec Board meeting for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Chris Serbo.
Here.
Tracy Flukie.
Here.
Dean Hess.
Here.
Heidi Murphy. Here. Mark Castonia.
Here.
Donovan Miller.
Here.
Ron Mowerman.
Here. All right, if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Please keep in mind our brave men and women are helping keep us safe here abroad. Action on the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second for the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Action on the minutes from February 17th, 2025 Park Board meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state name and address, limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named. Board is not able to take action at this meeting. Any comments from the public, from anything not on the agenda? Hearing none, there's nobody on the interweb, it doesn't seem, we'll move on. Acceptance of written reports. Anything we want discussed? Otherwise, do we need to make a motion to accept these? Yeah, okay.
Motion to accept the report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the reports. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, reports are accepted. 8A, under items for discussion, consider, discuss, and act on a recommendation of village board regarding changes to co-sponsored relationships and policies. Rex?
Okay, this is picking up from the February meeting where we discussed the possibility of making changes to our policy and our guidelines as regards to co-sponsor organizations and residency. As a reminder for those who may be listening who were not involved in this last month, the co-sponsor organizations can accept participants if they attend a school in Ashwaubenon or if they are an Ashwaubenon resident, no matter where they would be attending school. Due to different factors, depending upon the group, we have 3 organizations that have requested that we take a look at those policies and allow them to accept non-resident, non-Ashwaubenon-based students in the school system. So those 3 organizations would be Ashwaubenon Youth Wrestling, Ashwaubenon Swim Club, and Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball. So we heard discussion, or we started discussion last month on those 3. We had the opportunity to ask questions, and basically we left it for people to sit and think about, you know, how they wanted to proceed on this as a park board and what recommendations they would like to make to village board, who will have the ultimate decision-making power on any changes as it would involve this. So I guess what I'll do is I'll leave it or bring it back to the board here and say, what are your thoughts? I guess, Chris, do we want to go as a whole? Do we want to talk about it as a whole, or would we maybe want to take it organization by organization? I'm not sure if whatever we do would be across the board, or if we'd want to take each organization separately because of the circumstances each organization has.
My feeling, just off the top, would be to take it as a whole. I don't know if we want to, whatever way we move forward, I don't know if we want to make this a case-by-case decision or just cover it as a whole. And my thought is to just cover it as a whole. I don't know.
Before we get
Opinions?
started, I'm gonna recuse myself from the vote and step down, so.
Okay.
Now, Donovan, you can still be involved in the discussion. It's just the vote. Okay. Okay.
So that's my feeling on it. I don't know, any other opinion on that?
I would agree with you, Chris. And I wasn't able to be at the February meeting. I was flying home. But I did watch the meeting, and I know there was a lot of discussion, and I want to thank all the co-sponsors for coming and answering questions and, giving the board a bunch of information. As I used to be the Parks and Recreation Director many years ago, and when I first started, there were co-sponsored organizations. So in 1993, prior to that, they formed the co-sponsored organizations. And at that time, my understanding of it, the goal of the co-sponsored has always been to provide quality youth recreation sports to the residents of Ashwaubenon, the youth of Ashwaubenon. And I think we've done that, and it allows the village to do it at maybe a lower cost and a maybe quality product, because we don't have enough staff that we could do all of this stuff of ourselves. So it's been a really good, I think, partnership for many, many years. The community has changed a lot since we first started co-sponsored. And there's just three things I want to mention. I'm not going to go too far. The other thing that I think we should really think about, and recommendations that I would have, is the first one is we do have a lot of development going on in the south part of the village, which is my ward. And it's actually a De Pere School District. And if my understanding is correct, Rex, and please correct me, that they are not allowed to participate in our co-sponsored, even though they are Ashwaubenon residents. Is that correct?
No. Anyone who lives within the village boundaries
Can participate.
can participate.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what school you go to, what school district you go to. If you live within Ashwaubenon, you are able to participate.
Okay, good, because that was going to be one of my things. I was thinking we should probably allow that part, because that part of the community is going to develop, and it will be getting a lot more families down there. The other thing, I think, like Chris's comment was to look at this as a whole. I think that's important that we treat all of the organizations the same. I don't want us to pick and choose, okay, boys baseball is going to have this one's going to have this one's going to have that. So having said that, I think a fair way to look at it, if there's organizations that want to allow residents, they're allowed to do that, but their non-residents have to pay a higher fee to participate. And then the village withholds the cash funding that we provide for those organizations. And each year, the organization has to let the Parks Director know by a certain time whether they want to allow residents or non-residents into the program, so we can budget accordingly for it. Because right now, there's 3 organizations that really want to allow non-residents, and there's 3 that do not. So let's say soccer, for instance, a couple years from now, they have the other issue. They need to allow non-residents in because their numbers are dropping for whatever reason. Then they would have the ability to do that. They could say, okay, now we need to offer non-residents next year. So we would like to forego our support, our cash donations, so we can open it to non-residents so our program is viable. I just hate to see us picking and choosing different things for different organizations. I think that gets confusing, and it's not as fair to everybody as I would like to see it as the co-sponsored organizations. So those are kind of my feelings on it, really thinking about it, listening to what the discussion was at your last meeting, and trying to keep it as consistent so it's not difficult for the Parks and Recreation Department to monitor everything and make it that much more complex for us to keep track of everything.
So what you're suggesting, and because a lot of different angles here with any direction that we're going to go, is that you're saying that if an organization decides to accept non-residents from any community, so basically all of Brown County, then their funding will stop.
Except for the ones that we already allow. So like you're saying, when people open and roll into the school district, if they either go to school or live in Ashwaubenon, they're not considered the non-resident rate. They can participate. So anybody outside of that would be considered a non-resident.
Okay, so my question then is, we have multiple user groups, or just, again, we have multiple user groups, whether it be ISA, whether it be FC Green Bay, whether it be Synergy, they all rent the fields. They all have Ashwaubenon residents. They also allow non-residents. So then our co-sponsored organizations would not be paying any, you're saying that if all we're gonna do is take the funding away, so then they would be getting free use of the facilities.
Yes.
But then how is that any different than ISA and FC Green Bay and Synergy and any other youth sports organization that is currently doing that and paying us for the use of the fields and the maintenance that we need to do on them? There's no difference.
They're still a co-sponsored. We still have those programs that are being offered through our community. And we could cap the amount of non-residents they have too. We say 20%, 25%, whatever the case may be, that they could have in that program. I just think it's important to have a co-sponsor organization that allows everybody to participate at a reduced fee or a lesser fee. So if a boy wants to play baseball and it costs him $20 to play baseball or whatever it is, and I don't know what it is now, Donovan, let everybody participate. If you cut off, like, let's say swimming, for instance, we say you have to pay for all your pool time, you have to pay for everything. They may not be viable anymore, or the fees will be so darn high that a typical kid, if I'll put it that way, maybe wouldn't be able to participate. So it's kind of like we're letting them take non-residents, I'm sorry. We're penalizing them to a degree because we're taking their funding away, but we're still keeping track, we're taking care of the fields, we're taking care of the pool, we're allowing them to have free use of that. And maybe their program is more viable that way as well. And the residents are benefiting from having a viable program.
I agree, Tracy, with pretty much everything you said. It's, to me, it boils down to having viable programs available. The times have changed. When the co-sponsorship was set up, I would think, with our taxpayers in mind, and rightly so, to provide services for our residents. Times have changed at a point, and listen, when we went into that last meeting, I don't want to say set, but I was, in my mind, pretty much against the non-resident part. But after listening to the organizations, and I'm glad they came forward, they did a nice job of presenting their programs and the hardships. Got me to thinking that if we allow these programs or these programs start to die, we're not servicing our residents and our kids the way we should be. So anyway, that's just food for thought.
If I might want to interject something. When I was at that last meeting, and where we got to this position to start with, back in the day, if you will, there was a concern by residents that the residents themselves or the open enrollments necessarily did not have equal or fair coaching practice, if you will, opportunities to be equally in terms of competition, and also the fact that the residents were paying for non-residents. If we were to make changes, how would we equalize that? I posed a scenario at the last meeting, and I didn't really get the satisfaction that the difference here is when you have non-residents and you have residents competing, is how do you wind up with fairness in terms of the residents? The scenario I posed was if in fact you bring in a non-resident and they're competing, and you have an individual, and I understand that the need for trying to increase your enrollment, I do understand that. And having coached myself, I also understand the competitive pressures that coaches are under. And that drives sometimes some decisions where you're going to have some possible disappointment. I think there may be less disappointment when you're dealing with a collective group that has a collective, how should I say, interest, all Ashwaubenon residents. When you're bringing in another group, a competing group, if you will, non-residents, and you have a guy on a, let's say for an example, a relay team, and he's been on that team, and all of a sudden you bring in a non-resident to fill a spot, and you find out that that non-resident happens to be better in performance. And I understand that relays are based upon performance, wrestling is based upon performance, and a number of other sports because they're individualized. But when you wind up with things that are in a team nature, such as a relay, and you find out that a non-resident is better than a resident, and so you now pull out that resident, that person that was in that team, simply because now a non-resident is better in terms of competition and timing or whatever. Now what do you do? Now, if you have all residents, you don't have that issue, okay? Because they are the ones that are paying for it. Now, we could set up a fee structure and saying, well, if you have non-residents, depending upon the sport, and I looked at what the dollar amounts were with regards to each one of the co-sponsored organizations and trying to figure out what a fee base would be. I also looked at, one of the concerns is capping the amount of non-residents participation in the individual co-sponsored organizations. And one looked at 25%, and the other one said they didn't need a cap. To some degree, having a cap on it does limit the amount of, how should I say, possibility that you have non-residents taking more spots than what you would have for residents. And I looked at a percentage that I thought might be acceptable for that. But I still don't know how you're going to figure out what it would be a fair and equitable fee base for non-residents. One comment was made that, well, we have Ashwaubenon offers lessons to non-residents, and they charge a particular fee for that. I'm not sure how you would break that down in terms of an individual that's competing in a whole sport for an entire season, what a dollar amount for that might be. I did take one amount, one organization was $50,000, and they had X amount of people in that sport and divided into $50,000. I doubt whether a parent's going to pay $700 to have their non-resident be involved, to kind of look at some equitable fairness across the board between non-resident and resident. So there are some other extenuating circumstances that are not necessarily clear-cut and dried. Yet, I also understand that if numbers are going down in a particular organization, and I understand that there's a need to fill different things because you can't compete the way that you would like to. I understand you're looking for bodies. So I'm not really sure what the exact compromise is between the organization surviving versus the ultimate benefit for our own citizens in Ashwaubenon, for them being the taxpayers.
Ultimately, I believe we're having this conversation because the issue was raised by people who live in Ashwaubenon, people who participate in the organizations, the co-sponsored organizations. Just like 20 years ago where it was a problem that they did not want non-residents, I think we listened to the community and say, hey, there's a need for non-residents now. So to speak to Dean's situation, if it comes up again where, you know, the community says, hey, we need to relook at this, whether it be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, that's what we're here for. Like as a committee, that's what we're here for, is to listen to the community say, we've identified something that we think needs fixing. Can you help us fix it? So, if you make a change now, that doesn't mean it's permanent. Doesn't mean that it has to last for 20 years. The next time it comes up or there's a situation or somebody wants to talk about it, that is legitimately why we are here as a community board, to represent the community. And I just wanted to clarify with you, Tracy, so looking at the agenda, there is a page where it says like monetary impact. So with your proposal, it would be like the direct payment for supplies that you would, if they were opening to non-residents, it would be the direct payment of supplies fund that would be rescinded from the organization. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know what they use the money for, but I think you're right. It's just that cash donations, if you'd say that we give
So
to
it's like
the,
roughly 3,000 for most co-sponsored organizations.
yeah, I think, aren't they each kind of different, Rex?
They're all a little bit different.
And I don't disagree with that. I think the in-kind and the use of the facilities is going to make or break an organization. I think the nominal 3,000 to 5,000, or wrestling, very nominal, in supplies, I think that is something that can be worked around, whether it's 3,000 to 5,000, but the in-kind is what's gonna make or break.
I don't want to throw a wrench in anything again here, because real good conversation, but you mentioned wrestling. Wrestling will need to talk to the school district of whether the school district is fine having them in the schools, because they don't use any of our facilities. They use the school facilities and the school mats and that. So they also have a number of organizations that rent their facility out. Ashwaubenon Youth Basketball is another example. They rent the facility out, but but they get it for free because they are all Ashwaubenon ASD students. So wrestling still has another hurdle that they would need to climb, is to get permission from the school to open it up to, basically, it becomes a club then, not necessarily supported by the village. And they may or may not have a concern with that. Whereas with baseball and swim club, those facilities are ours. So ultimately, then we would have that ability to monitor or make those policies. Wrestling still would have another hurdle to go over.
But wrestling would still be considered a co-sponsored, correct, that they are now? And the school district probably provides use of those facilities no different than we work together on a lot of different things together with the school district?
I can't answer for the school district of what they would and wouldn't allow, but I think that there might need to be some discussion with the school district from wrestling, depending upon what our recommendation is.
Are we in agreement that if we allow non-residents to enroll, that there would be a fee for non-residents?
Well, right now, the non-residents who are attending an Ashwaubenon school pay an extra $15 per person. And that extra $15 per person goes directly to the organizations already. So, I don't know, Dean, what specifically are you asking? Like for the new non-residents
Right,
that are, so like what should they be paying?
right.
I don't have a recommendation for that. That would be up to the boards to decide and direct me.
So that being said, then we would need to look at what an acceptable fee would be. In addition to that, are we looking at a capacity limit, a percentage?
So looking at the aquatics program, the swim lesson program, that is administered by the village, that is not affiliated with a co-sponsorship, the non-resident fee is $15 extra on top of the swimming lesson fee. So those are people who are potentially not open enrolled and non-residents that are being charged to an extra $15 to use the facilities of Ashwaubenon. So $15 for a non-resident, non-open enrolled, I think would be fair across the board, because that is what our rec programming at the community center administers.
Yeah, I would agree.
And if you look at our school district, I confirmed it was 38%, I believe, open enrolled. Like Ashwaubenon Ashwaubenon School District is 38% open enrolled. So obviously that pool of students are eligible for our co-sponsored organizations. That does not mean that every family that open enrolls is going to participate in our co-sponsored activities. So to put a percentage on it, I believe swim club proposed 20 to 25%. I'd even go as low as 10% of the organization. I do not have a strong opinion about that. I would just like to see the programs be successful.
And I think we all would. Unfortunately, sometimes it's my job to make sure everyone knows all of the what could happen if type situations. So if there's not a cap put on and it's just wide open, and I'm gonna take wrestling out of it because again, they're using the school, the Ashwaubenon School District facilities. So we're looking at the pool, and then we're looking at, with boys baseball. There will be extra expenses incurred by the village by increasing numbers. There always will be. There'll need to be more time to prepare the diamonds because there'll be more games, because there'll be more kids. That means more chalk, that means more higher utility bill because you'll be playing more night games, more diamond dry, more maintenance on the fields. So if everyone's okay with that, that will affect the amount of work that the village has to do to prep everything, and potentially utility bills. We don't pay, we have a great relationship with the school district in terms of they do things for us, we do things for them. One of the things that they do for the pool is they maintain the pool. They pay for the chemicals, they monitor the pool, so on and so forth. When you have a higher bather load, when you have more people in the pool, they will be using more chemicals to keep the chlorine levels where they need to be and the pH levels where they need to be. That's just the nature of the game with the pool. So I just want to make sure that, again, good discussion, but I need to make sure everyone has the facts of what could happen, because I'm telling you, because I'm seeing the direction, I think, where you guys are leaning, there will be higher costs borne by the village by allowing more people into the program.
Do you think it's
Non-resident.
exponentially higher, or do you think it's nominally higher?
It depends on how many people the board decides to allow in.
Well, and if we're taking,
If it's a wide open floodgate, it will be
I don't-
exponentially higher.
I don't think that that's the direction any of us want to see it go in.
And I don't know, I'm, again, just saying, be careful, you need to consider this whenever, before we get too deep into a discussion.
Rex, I looked at what the enrollment numbers that were given to us by the various organizations, and I picked a 15%. And the numbers that I looked at was something that I believe that the organizations would be able to handle in terms of trying to get additional members in, non-residents, yet not be an unlimited amount, which some of them said that they most certainly could go unlimited, that there wouldn't be a need for having set limits. And I think that speaks to what you're alluding to here, is that you don't want it uncontrolled, that there needs to be some type of guidance on it. Otherwise, the expense could be astronomical. I did also look at that this would be maybe a one-year pilot situation, being reevaluated after the first year to see how the or the non-resident addition to it would affect those various programs. And if you're looking at if that number does go up, that 15%, and then the following year you stay with the 15%, that 15% would be based upon the previous year's enrollment numbers. And so it could go up gradually each successive year after that, based upon, we then could look at it on an annual basis and see if what type of financial impact that is having on the village. But I think there needs to be some monitoring put into the mix here to make sure that in our own best interest that we're not biting off more than we can chew.
I do think reassessing frequently is probably going to be necessary because our community is evolving. It's not going to stay at 38% open enrollment in our schools for forever. We're not going to have, the median age that we have for forever. So it does have to be an evolution. It does have to be a little bit fluid. It's just, is it annually? Is it every 5 years, et cetera? However, it's being brought to our attention by the community now. And if it were to be brought to our attention again by the community, I think it deserves to be heard and action taken on it. So whether I don't have an issue with a pilot program at all. assessing every year, et cetera. I think that that's fair in order to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the programs that we are offering. And 15%, I don't have a problem with either.
What'd you say about 15%? I didn't hear the end.
I don't take issue with 15% of the previous year's enrollment for open enrollment, like, I think that that's fair. And then that's an easy way to assess costs as well, so.
I think if there's a concern with regards to non-residents using our facilities, I'm not sure about what the associations would be willing to put down as far as the non-resident fee, but I would suggest that we come up with an appropriate fee that be charged for non-residents, and that fee would come back to the village, rather than have it look like it's being money put into their coffers. I think that would be a way to take that part out of it. To address your question with regards to are people going to be better swimmers, for instance, they may be. But on the other hand, I think the association or the swim people pointed out to us, if they don't have enough swimmers to fill a relay, it's kind of a moot point as to who's a better swimmer or not. And I'd like to see the swimmers have an opportunity to not just compete on an individual basis, but also be able to swim on relays, so you get the team building and things like that come into it.
I guess what I'm was trying to suggest before, that in the current policy as it stands, that part of the, I forget which one it was. Well, it talks about the fact that the village is concerned in the current policy that there be a fair and equitable manner in which the kids are being coached and having accessibility to competitiveness as a resident, okay? And I think that's also something that needs to be, as I talked about, if we go forward with this in an annual evaluation, that also is looked at as well. So if we're, in terms of what you were suggesting, that would be part of that evaluation by the organization. And it's their board's responsibility to make that assessment and in a fair and equitable manner in terms of how their organization is performing with regards to any policy that we set forward. And if we find that they are not, well, then obviously they could be subject to not being sponsored by the village.
Rex, do all the fees paid by residents and non-residents, all those fees go to the individual programs right now?
They stay with each organization.
Is that an accounting, if we were to suggest that the $15 non-resident fee go to the village versus the co-sponsored organization, is that an accounting hurdle that would need to be jumped over?
Well, it would involve the village trusting each organization to submit, once their registration is complete for their season, the list of the number of residents versus non-residents, and then that's a true and factual number, so that the village then could create an invoice for each organization.
How about if we don't even do that, because of the accounting end of it, co-sponsored has to tell us and we have to get it from them. We give them money, we give them cash now. Wouldn't it be simpler if we just say, if you want non-residents, we are not giving you cash anymore. We've got the money. We don't have to worry about them accounting for the non-residents. We don't have to worry about the back and forth. We're saving that money by not giving it to the co-sponsored organizations.
And that, at that point, you're penalizing the entire club for having a handful of non-residents. I disagree with that completely.
Well, that's their choice, though. If they really want non-residents in, that's their choice. Then if you want non-residents, great, we'll allow you to have non-residents, but we're not giving you the cash anymore. We still are going to support you. You get free use of the facility, you get free use of this. We're gonna support you with this, this, and this, which is huge. the things that we do for our co-sponsor are just huge in itself with even taking that money away. And I think a lot of the co-sponsors, if we were not doing the work we were doing for them, would not be able to do it. If we charged them for all of that work, their programs would not be viable. And that's what I don't want to see, that the programs aren't viable anymore. I think we need to do it the most simplistic way we can and allow some flexibility for the organizations, because organizations don't know what's going to happen the next year. All of a sudden, softball is going to come, that people don't want to play softball anymore for whatever reason, and their numbers are going to drop like crazy. And they're going to go, oh, we really want to add non-residents now because we need to keep our program going. Then they have the choice of doing that.
I
They
don't,
could add
I don't
non-resident.
see that as a choice if you take away $3,000 from the swim club. I don't see that as a choice. They've got a choice from a standpoint of staying away from it, but we're not addressing the issues that have been brought to us at that point by penalizing the entire club.
So I think an adequate way to look at it is relatively $3,000 on a however many hundreds of thousands of dollars it costs to rent a pool, or like we're looking at like just 3,000 versus 80,000.
Right.
So for a swim club to charge an extra $10 per set, like just throwing it, I'm not saying they're gonna do it. If they were to charge an extra $10 per participant, they've made up their $3,000.
And how many people are you saying they've got to have then?
Or their swim meets,
At $10 a person?
or their
for
swim
3,000?
meets, where they charge an additional couple of extra dollars. Like, I think $3,000 for these organizations is a little bit of a drop in a bucket.
One thing speaking of just on this topic right here, is all the organizations that presented last month, unless I'm wrong on this, nobody mentioned the cost, really. It was all about the numbers. So I'm not sure, I side with Heidi on this one. It's not a drop in the bucket, but I don't think that's their main concern, is the budget part of it. It's gonna cost them a little bit more, but it's definitely, what's at the forefront of this is the numbers. And I think we gotta try to help them keep their programs viable, and that means numbers.
I will say this as well, as I'm thinking through, so forgive me on this one. You mentioned the numbers dropping. What happened if there's a much less drop?
Right.
Okay, and I'm going to say, we'll look at it in the other way as well, because there's always ebbs and tides, right? And registration, and soccer is a great example of that. Ashwaubenon Youth Soccer just a couple of years ago, just only a couple of years ago, only had 240 kids. Now they have about 450. So they've almost doubled.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean? So
Just-
if the trend is going like that, then my role would be back to you of,
What are we doing here?
yeah, it's kind of like stop that 15%.
Yeah.
That they've got plenty of, if it's homegrown Ashwaubenon or open enrolled kids that are creating that increase in numbers in whatever organization it is, then I think we need to ixnay the growth of the non-residents, you know, and stop and cap it and tell that group that, okay, you're healthy again, you know, you keep the ones that you've got, but so I just want to throw that out there as an option too. Just be aware that there are ebbs and tides. And just because an organization this year or for the next couple of years is going to be down in numbers, doesn't mean that those numbers can't go up. Look what happened to soccer, and that's a great example. All of a sudden, they've got like 200 more kids. You know, that's
Right.
one of the reasons they decided we don't need this.
Right, and
Years ago, they might have.
right, and I
They don't
think
need it now.
I think that's allows the flexibility that the co-sponsors need, because it ebbs and flows, and soccer is a prime example of that. So maybe 2 years ago, when they only had 200 kids, they were maybe like, hey, well, you need to get residents here because we need to get more kids to participate. Well, all of a sudden now they're up at 400. And they're like, there's no way we're letting non-residents in because we are doing great, we don't need the kids. And everyone goes up and down like that, the organizations, and I think having the flexibility for them to make that decision, whether they want to allow non-residents or not, and we have criteria, you can only have 15% non-resident that you're allowing in. They pay $15 more to participate. We are not giving them the money that we normally gave them. That's the agreement we have, and that's what the organization decides whether they want to do that or not, and it's their choice. And then we're treating everybody the same. I just hate to see us taking certain ones and treating them differently because things change. And the next year, we might have one of the other organizations coming in and said, now I'm having problems and I need it too. So to try to keep it consistent for all and add some flexibility for those organizations, I think is important, but make it easy for the Parks Department to work with them and not make it an accounting nightmare back and forth.
So that being said, Tracy, do we have an tentative agreement on 15% cap on non-resident?
I think that'd be great to start with.
Now, non-resident or non-resident, non-open enrolled?
Non-resident, non-open enrolled.
Yeah.
So new non-residents that are not in a Ashwaubenon school system.
Correct.
Right.
So we can get another 15% in based off of their
Previous year's enrollment.
numbers that have been submitted.
Would that number pertain to groups that don't need extra participants? If you're talking soccer,
They're just not in it.
They're just not, they're not gonna decide to do it because they aren't interested in adding non-residents at this point.
They keep things the way they are.
Right. And maybe 2 years from now, they decide, oh, now I need to really look at it.
Of the ones that are on our list here this evening, were any of those, if I remember correctly, I'm drawing a blank here, didn't some of those say that if the funding got cut, they weren't interested in going down that road?
I believe that was youth baseball.
Youth baseball had that concern.
I believe it wasn't necessarily the funding, it was the in-kind.
In-kind, yeah.
And the in-kind support. So it wasn't necessarily the funding. So if you look at it as different buckets, so looking at the agenda, it looks like youth baseball gets in direct supply reimbursement approximately $2,750, so $2,750.
Hold on.
Yep,
It's actually 50.
Say more than that, isn't it?
and $3,000 for payroll costs.
Yep. So so add those two together.
So
That's
$5,750
their
total.
direct support.
So that is different than the estimated value of over $30,000 of field maintenance and utilities. So if they were to open to non-resident, non-open enrolled, they would essentially agree to not receive that $5,750. However, they would still receive that over $30,000 in-kind field maintenance and utility support, because they are still co-sponsored.
From my standpoint, I think it'd be worth asking the organizations whether they're in or out if we eliminated that money rather than beating a dead horse here this evening.
Sure, and that's what I was going to say. Chris, I know Donovan, he has the ability to speak tonight still, and it looks like he's interested in doing so, so we may want to open the floor.
Yeah, okay.
Motion to open the floor.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to open the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Floor is open.
Donovan Miller, 1415 Avondale Drive, acting here tonight as the Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball President. I know there's a lot of numbers floating around, so I just wanted to share some of the statistics that I pulled today. We have 249 league participants signed up. That's a give or take. That's the numbers in the system that I just pulled from work. There's some that have chosen to opt out, this or that. Of those, 70 are non-resident, which means they are school choiced or live in the community, go to maybe a church school or homeschooled or whatever that is. So 70 of the 249 league baseball participants, that's 28% roughly, right? We also have our tournament teams. So of that 249, which they are required to play league baseball to be on an Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball tournament team, there are 118 enrolled on that. A 2 is a give or take. We're hoping for a couple more to get a 7U team. That's whatever. Of those, 33% are the non-resident, open enrolled, so on and so forth. Other things that I know of for sure, facts are we turned away 6 inquiries this year for baseball because they were not open enrolled, they did not live in the school district, or within the Ashwaubenon city limits. One of them lived, on the other side of Packerland in, I don't know if that's King of, it was like, if you lived on the other side of the street, you'd be playing baseball, but, so he was just looking for a T-ball option. I don't know what they chose, but they would have had to drive to East Green Bay. That was one. And we had a number of, I would like to play with my cousin. We haven't had any 5-star recruits asking to come play baseball, but most of our declines were, hey, my nephew would like to play with my cousin or whatever it is. So that's what we're turning away. Now, if we were to open it up, I would say that there's a few more that would organically come, but our focus would be, that those kids can then play on the same team together. We'll have a few more numbers, which will help our organization. Again, I mentioned last meeting, this is the first year in a long time our 11 and 12-year-olds will be traveling outside of Ashwaubenon on weeknights to play baseball, and hopefully we're getting this all worked out with Little Shoot and Freedom to play a league outside of Ashwaubenon. So that's new and unique. It's been fairly well received, mainly because that age group has a large amount of tournament team kids on it, and not as many league baseball. You see the numbers drift off as they get older and choose other sports. So I just also wanted to say that for us, it's not necessarily the financial piece, the 3,000, 5,000, whatever it adds up, necessarily, right? I mean, it's a great help. It's a great partnership. It's the facilities that would really, like, we would need to increase our enrollment fee substantially. And at that point, a family would choose between why pay XYZ amount of dollars to play for Ashwaubenon when they could go to, say, a club team. I won't name club teams, but a club team in the area for a few thousand more. They get to practice year round, so on and so forth. So what we provide to the Ashwaubenon families is the ability for them to play with their friends at a low cost, hopefully in the area, right? Because if those league nights down at the ballpark, you get kids playing a 5:30 game and like, I want to stay to watch so-and-so play at 7 o'clock. Oh, okay. Then they stay down there, they have a good time, they have a hamburger, and they watch the next game. So that's the friendships that stay there then and carry all the way through. So that's our main focus. The tournament team side of it, it is something that, again, they have to play league baseball. So if we don't have league baseball, we'll probably still figure a way to have tournament teams, but that would mean then, I'm gonna do quick math here, but 131 kids aren't playing baseball or need to go find another place to play baseball. Because I'm thinking the 118 that are signed up would probably pay a little more to continue to play tournament team baseball, because then they could practice all week, I guess, and not have to play league baseball, which is a big ask from families now, is they don't want to play league baseball, they want to play tournament baseball. And I say you have to play league baseball in order to play tournament baseball. So that's it from us. I just wanted to bring those numbers that we're really only going to get no more. I wouldn't think we'd get more than 20. If we were to do 15%, that would be 37 kids. I don't see that ever happening, but.
With $5,700, which would be taken away is one of the options. With 249 kids to make that up, to make things even again, like where they are now, would be about an extra $23 per child for the basic registration fee.
Right, and registration fee would likely have to go up a little bit to, we haven't raised our registration in quite a long time. Tournament teams has crept up. We try to keep league baseball minimum so that it's not a burden. I have visions of, many kids playing baseball somehow, and the target is to keep that as low as they can to break down that first barrier, because you have to pay league fees to get your jersey and support everything, and then you have to buy a bat, and you have to buy a helmet, and you have to buy shoes, and you have to buy slide pants, and it adds up really quick. Well, you need a glove too, because you gotta play defense, but it all adds up real quick. We have things that we're trying to work on to help kids play baseball that don't have a glove or a bat. We got a little loan closet we're gonna start, and you don't need those things necessarily to come play baseball, but we need to be able to play baseball. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah. If we are allowed non-residents, and using your figures of 15%, 37 kids, supposing you had 45 non-resident kids apply for that, how would you decide which 37 you would pick out of that 45?
So the thing about league baseball is that really we can go up to, I don't like 14 on a team because that makes people sitting on the bench, but we can really accordion the numbers. We can go at certain age groups as low as 10 and be comfortable that if somebody's on vacation, they could still play baseball. Or we could have a bunch of people and just rotate them in, not ideal, but if we get those extra ones, that could branch into another team. And instead of having 5 teams and having one team on a bye week, we could have the fields used the entire night. To Rex's point, the lights got to be on. Well, maybe the lights are on for one game at night, which is going to happen this year, for 2 teams to play baseball. When if we could have the whole park full, that's still lights are on, but it's a benefit to then everybody.
So would it be like first come, first serve? Like if you have 37 open enrollments or open non-resident spots? If you have 37 of them, but 45 people are interested, would you say the first 37 get to be, and the remaining 8, there's not a spot for you?
Again, 37 would,
Hypothetically.
it would be split amongst,
We're just wondering, would you turn away the remaining 8?
if there was a number, we would have, much like the day park program, where
Okay,
here's the non-resident open enrollment date. It's full. So we could do that. Like, we have all the capabilities. We have the Sports Engine app. That's why I can track all the non-residents now. We add another category, and we can give all.
so it would be first come, first serve.
We could do that. Yes, definitely. And
The other thing too, and it would, again, need to have a lot of trust in the organizations to do so, but they didn't, the 15 is the max cap. Like if, I'm guessing if Donovan, if your 10 and 11 division or whatever is short on kids, all of a sudden you get a lot of non-resident, non-open enrolled kids signing up, and they go into 10, 11, and now all of a sudden all your teams are whole. You've only increased your numbers by 8 or 9% to make all your whole teams. Do you need to go up to 15%, or would you just say, okay, we're good now for our needs? We're done with the non-resident because we've met that. Or would you go all the way up to 15% to get those numbers?
Personally, I think that would be up to the organization. 15% is the cap.
Correct.
So you could be any place from 0 to 15%. But you're not allowed any more than 15%.
And that's my point, is they don't need to go up to that 15% too.
yeah, I mean, sitting here under fire right now, I would say that the 15% window would be open until it was closed. So whatever the registration period would be for non-resident, non-Ashwaubenon people, if that was a 1-week window, that's the 1-week window. If we get our 15% or that, we'll close.
I think our concern is that if you have more applicants than what your 15% allows, how do you choose which ones to include?
Right, and our enrollment software would say that we could set a cap in there.
Yeah, it's no different than summer camp when it's full, it's full.
I could tell you the last person that signed up for league baseball, I have it right in front of me. So at that point, we could reach out to that person and say, we're sorry, but we were full.
I don't want to say caution's not the right word. I would caution the organizations with, if this proceeds forward like this, and obviously it has to still go to village board. Donovan, a situation could happen, you've got 37 extra kids signing up, but none of them are in the age group that actually needs players to make your team whole. And you're in the same boat. And now you've just got extra kids and a lot of extra non-residents. You've lost the funding, but you still have the problem of not having kids in that age division. So I would, that's something that the organizations, if they move forward with this, need to consider, because they could still be in the same boat as they were if the kids don't sign up for the age divisions and or the relays or whatnot that they need people in, which is the reason why this is being brought forward.
That brings me to one of the three components that I had talked about at the end of the year. So let's say you wind up with that situation, okay? And you don't have all those age groups filled. At the end of the year, I would still believe with instituting this modified policy, I still think you need to have an annual review process of what we're asking of the organizations. And it may have to be tweaked one way or another. But I think just simply to have total, open enrollment for non-residents and not have a cap on it, I don't think it's the way to go.
The only way I would see more than 37 signing up is if other area leagues were to fold. Then we really do need to revisit this, because we could, if let's say the Green Bay, we saw Green Bay consolidate already at one point. West and East, they've consolidated. So and De Pere's good. They'll be good for a very long time, but maybe more north of here or whatever, there's leagues that could consolidate or just not exist anymore, and that's a possibility. But definitely, as far as baseball is concerned, we have all the technology, and we want to be a great partner and willing to share all the information we got, and to make sure this works. Again, without the support from the village, it would be very difficult for those 131 kids to play baseball at a rate they could afford to play. So,
Rex, I know we're kind of at the outset of this. We're kind of decided to act this from a kind of a blanket, but cover it all at once. But for the programs that would not want non-resident to go that direction, would they still be technically co-sponsored then?
Yes.
So they've got that option.
No change.
Okay.
Full support of everything that they have right now.
Okay.
That being said, Rex, it wouldn't make any difference then for whatever co-sponsored organization you have. The 15% still could apply to them if they ever chose that they still wanted to.
They could make that switch. I mean, I think you need to do it by the year.
Yeah.
Personally, whether it be a calendar year or however you want to do it.
Or your budget year.
These three organizations came to us first. So, and everybody else stays the same. And if we want to start January 1st or however we want to do it, then the time, if they wanted to switch over to allowing in more kids, I think it should be a date that's allowed, and that's good for the full calendar year. And I think the easiest way to do it is the calendar year, but.
Yeah, and you guys have your budget you're working on, so maybe it falls in line with the budget. They have to let you know by such and such a time, so then the 2026 budget, okay.
So then it would
swim's
probably be at the end of July.
Right, yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
putting our budgets together
Yeah.
by August, we're
Right.
actually kind of trying to wrap things up.
Yeah, and they have, kind of forecasting that baseball would know, maybe in 2026, we need more kids. We know we're gonna need more kids, so we're gonna forego the cost of, the cash that we get. So then the budget, that's taken out of the budget. But swim says, no, we need that cash, we're not going to go there. So then that stays in, and they are not putting non-residents, but they need to let you know by July for the next year's budget, so you can accommodate that in the budget.
As long as we're talking dollars, out of curiosity, each group gets a different amount of money. How were those dollar amounts determined? And why?
So those dollars were determined well before I started, and I've been here 20 years. We have decreased a number of those dollar amounts over the years just because of the financial health of each organization. Mark, you've been on Park Board a while. I think we might have decreased the soccer, softball, and baseball budgets by like $1,000 at some point, maybe about 10 years ago, because the numbers were very healthy. But how they initially came to those dollar amounts, I don't know. That was before my time.
So why don't they all get the same amount?
Because
Different needs.
because each organization has unique costs depending upon what those costs are, as well as each organization has a large variance in numbers. Soccer doesn't have a lot of expenses, and they've got a lot of kids, whereas wrestling only has 48 kids, or 47 participants, which is why they get a much lower dollar amount. All the organizations, remember, are still covered by village insurance, is one of the benefits of being a co-sponsored organization.
I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I'm not sure that number was finessed, a little bit over the years, trying to see what the health of those organizations were. If their balances got fairly high, then it was discussed at the park board level of, do we need to allot that much money to them when they're doing very well financially already? And so those numbers have decreased somewhat for some organizations over the years based on that financial health the organizations had. But again, I don't know the initial starting point, how they got there.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clean some things up, if we don't have any more questions for Donovan, should we close the floor here?
Yeah, move to close the floor.
Well,
Sorry.
there's other organizations here. There's other organizations, would they like to see Swim Club is here? Would they like to come up and say anything that they'd like to?
All right, I am Renee Jaden Rice. I am representing Ashwaubenon Swim Club. As far as if we could function without the payment, we would get $2,900. And I would say that I would want to bring this back to the board to make a decision as a group. But if we look at 15% of our 76 current enrolled swimmers would be bringing in 11 swimmers. We would have to look to make sure that the enrollment that those 11 swimmers are going to be bringing in would cover that cost that we would be missing out on from the village. That's one of the considerations we have to do. I would say as far as our enrollment, how we would handle those 11 swimmers, we would begin a waiting list. I would say we've had people who we have turned away in the past that we'd start making this list and then look at where we have space, because we do have different age groups that have plenty of swimmers and others that do not have as many. And we would prioritize those other spaces and figure out how many per group we have, and then do a lottery system for that. Were there other things that you were wondering how swim would handle specific things? I don't know. Okay.
So do you think the 2,900, would that be a big hit for the swim club?
I was doing the math on that, and we would need, because different groups pay a different amount based on how much swim time they get. So if they were all in the youngest grade, the beginning group, it would be the enrollment's about $275 for the season. But our oldest swimmers pay over $400 per season. So it depends on who comes in and how many of those swimmers we would need to recoup the cost. I think we can do it without that. It's the in-kind support of the pool that we would not be able to survive without. So we absolutely appreciate the co-sponsorship and would walk away from this completely if that was off the table. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else here to speak? I don't think there's anybody in the audience. Okay.
Okay, I'll make a motion to close the floor then.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Floor is closed.
Okay, I would make a motion that we allow non-residents into our co-sponsored group with a cap of 15%.
The three that have requested it.
At this point, the three that are requesting, but I think it's something in the future, if there's another organization that needs to go there, it's open to them as well. They can make that choice.
So maybe we suggest that by July,
Yes.
co-sponsored organization needs to notify the Park and Rec director if they would like to participate
There you go.
by allowing non-resident, non-open enrolled participants
Yep.
up to 15% of their prior year's enrollment at a rate of an additional $15 per participant.
Yes. And they also will forego the cash contribution that the village has provided in the past.
One of my three components was that there be an annual evaluation of this particular modified policy.
So that would be we could buy every July. Each co-sponsored organization should notify.
Yeah. Does that work, Dean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the motion is,
So the motion is that the co-sponsored will need to notify the Parks Department by July if they would like to include non-residents in their program.
Non-resident, non-open enrolled.
Non-resident, non-open enrolled
Yep.
in their program with a cap of 15%
Can we say by July 1st? Can we get?
by July 1st,
Okay.
with a cap of 15%, and that they then will forego the cash contribution that they have been receiving. And the annual review will be part of the July 1st notification to the Parks Department,
okay, everybody understood that?
hopefully.
I'm gonna second it.
Okay,
Second it.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And this goes to the village board. This isn't a final. It goes to the village board yet. Just a recommendation to the,
This would go to the village board next week.
Yeah.
Next Tuesday for those organizations that are here. Village board is at 6 o'clock typically. I think that is still true for next week. Probably earlier in the agenda, just because when we have guests, they're usually early up.
okay,
All right,
moving
all
on.
right. Discussion, everyone, thank you.
8B, consider discuss on the new Ashwaubomay Lake Playground recs.
I just wanted, Melody had been working with several different playground representatives on some different options for Ashwaubomay Lake Playground. If you remember, I think we were budgeted a certain amount of money. I want to say 55,000. So I gave her a number of 50,000 because we need to have money for concrete and so on and so forth. And so she got different orders from, or different designs from playground companies. Once those were submitted, it went around to our staff, and our staff voted, and this is the equipment that we have ordered for Ashwaubomay Lake. So we're hoping to get this in May. Our goal, if it is able to be produced by then, our hope is to get it in before the season. We'll see how that goes. But I wanted to at least show you what new stuff is coming forward, so.
Can I ask a question on the memo? I was confused as to the cost. So it says monetary impact, capital funds project of 55,000. But then in the next line, it says the Parks Capital Project Fund has a budget of 50,000. The additional funding will need to be provided through the department's operating budget. So what is the actual budget and where is it coming from? And maybe I'm reading that wrong, but it's
Yep.
confusing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to take a look and see. So the 55,000 is what was budgeted,
Okay.
but I'm holding back 5,000 because we still need to buy concrete and whatnot to actually install the equipment. So the 50,000, which is part of the 55, is what I told Melody that we had available to, I don't want to say to play with, but for the companies to design up to a $50,000 price point, or at a $50,000 price point. So that is what we have in our budget,
55,000.
correct?
And then it'll come from the capital projects fund, and there's no funding coming from the operating budget then?
The money has been, specifically set in our budget for the 55,000.
Okay. Great.
So it's not like park development or anything like that.
Okay,
It's,
Thank
I believe it's capital improvements or capital project money.
okay. Thank you. I think it's cool equipment. Looks like it'll fit well out there.
We're excited with the palm tree theme, you know, and then we're, as you know, in the main playground within the park, we've kind of got for the toddler equipment, we've got the ship there already, and this kind of parlays into that ship theme. It's, you know, with the wrecked pirate ship front, and it'll go well in the lake
Yeah,
area.
be cute.
The shade structure, you'll see a lot of, almost all playground equipment now have some type of shade available for them, and this is a fabric cover. And that's easily taken down. Our guys already take down some of the shade structures we have within the lake for the public to sit underneath, and this will be an easy takedown for them at the end of the season. So we're excited to get it in there. And we got the little alligator too on the far left.
Yeah, it's cute.
So, that again goes with the lake theme.
Do we have any money allocated for Christmas lights for the palm trees for winter? Kinda cool.
When you go ice skating.
I've got a giant
Non-denominational lights?
Corona beer bottle, inflatable, we'll put it right there.
Yeah.
Non-denominational, yes.
I was in New Orleans last week. If you'd let me know, and when I was out on the swamp tour, maybe we could have tried to bring you back an alligator.
Oh, that would be interesting. We could come up with a special event around that. Some good alligator wrestling.
All right, that was just information, right? Okay. Any questions on that? No. All right, items for the next agenda. Anybody want to see anything?
Venture something?
Huh?
Anybody want to venture something?
Oh, yeah.
The only thing I will add quick, I don't know if Rex is going to mention it, so the next meeting is scheduled for April 15th. I don't know that Rex is going to have anything per se, because you did take action tonight on the co-sponsored items. We are hoping to move the village board meeting from April 22nd to April 15th.
Good idea.
We are looking at canceling finance and personnel on that day. So that would, if you do have any agenda items, it would push this meeting up to 5:30. It doesn't sound like we probably will have any items, but
I have nothing at this point.
just wanted to confirm that a 5:30 start time would be okay on the 15th. If we needed to meet, we wouldn't confirm that until about a week prior to the normal meeting time.
Really, I think the only thing I don't want to say the only thing, the only potential thing would be is if the village board kicked the whole co-sponsor thing back to the park board for further clarification on any certain part of it. And so then the question is, do we do it in April, or do we just skip it in April and move it to May? To be determined.
If we're not looking at doing anything till July 1st, I don't see a problem with us waiting until May.
Fair enough.
Okay. That's the end of business. I'll take a motion to adjourn if anybody wants to go home.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? We are adjourned.